Next up we have test. Alright, so I'm not going to focus on the opener since we've gone over that a lot. I'll just look at the camera animation here. So really like how you managed to get some sound in there. Um, and the fly-in's good. I think that probably would have tried to not go through the bench. Maybe above it or slightly around it, or maybe scooting the bench over slightly rather than passing directly through its surface might look better. And the end's all right. I think it comes in a little fast, so it might be good to kind of more gradually slow down as that approaches the characters, where it kind of whips around at the end, and maybe hold it for a moment on the characters before you cut out. But overall, this is looking good. Um, yeah, I mean, it seems to have worked out pretty well. I wonder, the render quality looks a little not great. I'm not sure why. Um, I'm just looking at these shadows, look kind of strange. They, I'm not sure why those look more gray there, so that's kind of interesting. But yeah, it's alright, and you got all the basics down there, so that's good. Next up is Stephanie. Alright, um, so yeah, I'm not going to spend time on the title part. So yeah, I think looks good. I think if you're going to play Blast, turn off the resolution gate. It's view camera settings resolution gate, and just do view camera settings no gate. And and in the play Blast option, you can uncheck like I think it's called like ornaments or something. That'll get rid of stuff like that. Those numbers at the top. Yeah, so it looks all right. I think it'd be better if you could have rendered it. But the camera move is actually pretty nice and smooth, and I like how it comes to a gradual stop at the end there, and it's kind of a nice, even, smooth movement, which feels pretty good. So I think that worked out quite well. Next up is Morgan. Okay, yeah, looks good. All the title stuff is good. We've already spent plenty of time talking about that. It's nice having the train roll in the station, and camera flyover looks pretty good. I like sort of actually, I kind of prefer the nicer, simpler movements, so I think that's nice, and you kind of pass through some foreground objects there. I think you could have come in even slightly even more gradually at the end, like kind of come to a slower stop, although it's pretty good as is. But I think it could have even slowed down more as it approached those characters. I might have gone a little bit lower and then be able to tilt up. So I'm looking, because right now maybe, I don't know, more than half, maybe 2/3 of the frame is looking at the ground, and then maybe 1/3 is the building. And if you went with the camera was lower and then tilted up more, you'd have like maybe just a little bit of ground and mostly buildings, which I think would be a nicer background for the characters. But yeah, looks pretty good. Next up is Catalina.
Just a cowboy, lonesome on this trail. A starry night, a campfire light, and the howling winds wail. The coyote call. Just
All
a
right. So
cowboy.
might might let this title finish a little bit more before fading in the animation because it becomes kind of hard to read there as it fades out with all that camera movement. Um, you should turn out if you're going to play blast, turn off the resolution gate, which is view camera settings, then go to no gate, and yeah, I think the camera move is good. That works well. Um, I think as far as quality, you should check your resolution, your play blast options. If I look at my play blast options here, turn off these view and show ornaments. That should get rid of stuff like that. And then the gate thing I was talking about is view, camera settings, no gate. Oh wait, doesn't that? Oh, and turn off gate mask as well. Hmm. Oh, I think I just took a minute to respond. It's acting a little funny. Yeah, I don't know. I was having a little problem with that. So yeah, that did work. It just let me just show that again. I was just having a little glitch. So if I see resolution gate, you see the green line, and then if I go no gate, that line goes away. And then for on the play blast options, yeah, turn those off. You can use your display size from render settings, is what I like to do, but that scale it to 100%, so 1.00, because I think by default it's at 0.5, and then you can browse where you want to save it. So those are helpful settings. Next up is Jonathan. Oops. All right. Um, I'm not going to focus on that opener part since we've talked about that a lot already. I like the starting out on the clock close up. I think it's interesting because it's a lot different than what I've seen before, and the dramatic music helps, and that camera move is kind of interesting. But I guess it just here it just sort of feels a little incomplete. Like it feels like we want to kind of move in on the characters, and it just feels like it ends somewhat abruptly. But we want it to be able to move down into where the characters are going to be. So I think it's a good start. I think you could just kind of finish the movement, and yeah, it looks okay. Obviously, it would have been better if you could have rendered rather than play blasted. Just see the light and shadows and all that kind of stuff would be a nice improvement. And you'd also it also solves all the sort of look of these anti the aliased edges. So and you can see like edges there would look cleaner if you rendered. But yeah, I think it starts out nicely, and I think if you can just kind of have it more finished by the characters, it'll be better. Next up is Jasmine. All right, that turned out really, really well actually. I think look at the detail. I keeping the snap house button. But look at the detail on the texture here. Like that holds up even in that close up. Oh, though looking again, we do have this line here. I'm wondering if that's a separate surface or maybe it's just how the UV map is set up. But the texture is really good. Well, I guess you'd sort of want ideally something similar, some kind of textured piece for these side pieces as well would help. And then the orientation of the texture on here looks a little bit funny, I think. I think you'd want that more horizontal, those lines. And then, maybe a separate thing for the top edge of the roof there. But yeah, overall that looks good. And the shadows, are just perfect, clean cast shadows. Those look really nice. And I like the real simple, just straight pullback. It looks like the kind of thing you'd have in a movie because it looks like what a real camera could do because, you would just put a camera, well, it's more than just a dolly because it goes lower, but it's kind of like just rolling a dolly backwards to see the town, and it looks like what could be a real camera movie. So I think all around this one turned out really well. Next up is Jackie. All right. Yeah, that worked well. Again, I'm just skipping the first part because we've talked about that a lot. Camera movement looks good. Shadows look good. The render looks nice and clean overall. I think, yeah. I mean, I don't really have any big comments for changes. I think this came together nicely. I guess the one thing I might do differently is I might not start quite so far back. Like I might start, more there-ish or something, because when you start really far back, it makes it obvious that this town is just sitting on this totally flat plane without any detail in it, and so it just looks a little odd. But then I think when you get up, to here, you don't really know what's outside there of the town, and you've got the hills in the background, which are interesting. So, I think that starting a little closer might be helpful. But it ends nicely, nice and smooth on the characters and looking up, so that works well. Next up is Rand. All right. Uh, yeah, I like the way this starts out. Um, you've got this foreground with a cross, and that gives you kind of puts you in a certain place. And I like these long shadows, and adds a lot of interest to the center here. I might adjust the lighting a bit so that it fills in those dark shadows. Because if you look here, it looks solid black in the shadow area, and you imagine if the sun's hitting the surface, there'd be some bounced light, so which would fill in those shadows. So go ahead and add some light, even just like a kind of a low intensity ambient light can be helpful just to fill in those shadows so they're not quite so black. Yeah, it comes in nice and smooth on the characters. Yeah, it looks good. I wouldn't have much to say about changing it.